future president is moving quickly to fill the clown car and before he changes his mind and fires them all.
Overnight, Trump announcing that Pete Hegseth, best-selling author, will lead the Department of Defense.
All ideology is all quite frightening, and I don't think anybody can defend this choice.
He has now nominated Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz as Attorney General.
Two different texts from different people at the Justice Department who just used the word insane.
So President-elect Trump is appointing people to his cabinet. This has triggered a firestorm in D.C. and in the media, which we're going to take a look at. But first, let's understand where he is at in the process with the official announcements and the ones that we're still waiting for.
Overnight, Trump announcing that Pete Hegseth, the best-selling author, the combat veteran, and co-host of Fox & Friends Weekend, will lead the Department of Defense. Trump writing, "Nobody fights harder for the troops, and Pete will be a courageous and patriotic champion of our peace through strength policy." Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe is heading back to the government. He's Trump's pick for CIA director. He's spoken out frequently about the threat China and Iran pose. He's also accused some in the intelligence community of political misinformation. Trump writing, "Ratcliffe has been a warrior for truth and honesty with the American public. When 51 intelligence officials were lying about Hunter Biden's laptop, there was one, Ratcliffe, telling the truth to the American people."
He has now nominated Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz as Attorney General of the United States. He just wrote this on Truth Social, quote, "Matt is a deeply gifted and tenacious attorney, trained at William and Mary College of Law, distinguished himself in Congress through his focus on achieving desperately needed reform at the Department of Justice. Few issues in America are more important than ending the partisan weaponization of our justice system. Matt will end weaponized government, protect our borders, dismantle criminal organizations, and restore Americans' badly shattered faith and confidence in the Justice Department."
All right, so there are two names that are going to draw the most backlash or meltdown from the media is definitely Pete Hegseth, because he worked at Fox News, so they're definitely going to come after him. And then Matt Gaetz, who is considered to be MAGA all the way, that small majority of people inside the Republican Party that was responsible for getting Kevin McCarthy out of there and voting Mike Johnson in. So yeah, he's going to get a lot of backlash too. But when you really want to shake things up and clean house, these are the type of people you probably need. All right, so now this takes us to the meltdown, okay? So we're going to look at a few clips. You might be shaking your head the entire time because, number one, you're going to see why they are so disconnected from reality, and number two, you're going to see why the ratings have dipped so much. So why don't we start with our favorite MSDNC deranged read.
The former and future president is moving quickly to fill the clown car and round out his cabinet before he changes his mind and fires them all. Moments ago, Trump announced that he has selected Fox Weekend morning show host, you can't make this up, Pete Hegseth, to serve as Secretary of Defense, because why not?
Compare this to 2016, right, when there were some people that came in from outside of MAGA world, however it was in its infancy, and they were going to be normal Republicans or normalize Trump. That's not this go-round. In fact, he's bringing in the likes of Pete Hegseth from Fox News to be Secretary of Defense. And look, Hegseth himself has 20 years as a National Guardsman. Good for him. He also represented the Koch brothers to try to help privatize the VA. So he's bringing in these super conservatives. And I think it's the loyalty test first, conservatism second.
Yeah, I find it funny how he just kind of like minimizes his combat experience, 20 years in the military. It's not like we have someone who did a whole stolen valor thing on us like tampon walls, right? This is a person who's very decorated, has the experience within the military, knows the media landscape as well, and isn't a person who's going to bend the knee to the establishment in D.C. So, or at the Pentagon for that matter. So as far as if you think about what is the qualifications for this type of job, it would be loyalty to Trump, eyes and ears for Trump to ensure that he doesn't get backstabbed like he did in his first administration. And three, someone who's going to identify the wokeness, get rid of it, clean house, and shift the paradigm within, obviously, the Pentagon, but most importantly, our military, which has a lot of issues on their hands right now. Now, just maybe Deranged Reed should be focusing on her job and keeping her job, because we know MSDNC is in trouble and about to be sold off. So there's that. But more importantly, we know these people, they just don't understand. They're out of touch. And speaking of people who don't understand, Van Jones is in that same category because his take on this is out of this world. Watch.
Well, I think Look, I don't. He looks great. I mean, but he sounds terrible. And I think that if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's this fiction that there's something wrong with America's military. What problem are you trying to solve? We have the most lethal, the most respected, the most feared military in the history of the world. There's not even number two. And so the idea that our military, there's something wrong with it, our generals are terrible, this is a fiction. And so when you start trying to solve non-existent problems with the best fighting force in the world, you actually create problems. And I don't think there's any evidence or any data that shows that having women involved in our military has made our military worse. Where is the evidence of this? This is all fiction, it's all ideology, and it's all quite frightening. And, you know, and I don't think anybody can defend this choice. This is not somebody who, I mean, he's a Fox News host who used to be in the military. If that's the standard we're going to be going with, I think it's very alarming.
All right, so clearly Van Jones has no idea what he's talking about. I know he's never served in the military, because anyone who's ever served would know that the military needs to be improved leaps and bounds. I mean, the only way you become the greatest fighting force on this planet is because that is the standard. There's always room for improvement. Now, before I go any further, please, if you're getting value from this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you want to support us further, go to the link in the description below. You can shop the merch store or buy us a cup of coffee. So what are the things that are wrong with the military that would require someone like Pete to go in there and clean it up? Well, it's very simple. I mean, there's a retention issue, meaning people don't want to keep serving in the military. There's a recruitment issue. People don't even want to join the military. There's a shortage issue, meaning we don't even have the amount of soldiers we're supposed to have. Now, speaking of nonsense, we got to hear from these unhinged ladies on The View who clearly don't understand military. Watch.
He also picked, you ready? Co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Not even like regular. Weekend. Pete Hegseth? Hegseth? Yeah. Okay, Pete Hegseth. And he's picked him to be U.S. Secretary of Defense. Now, MAGA supporters and detractors are trying to figure out what? Because of this pick.
Now, these women, they don't speak for America, quite frankly, because if they did, we'd have a different president, of course, right? But secondly, just the disrespect and the disdain for someone who served in the military for that long and has been in the media for 10 plus years of a major network. I don't care what show he's on. I don't even care if he was never on TV. What does that got to do with anything? But I wouldn't expect anything less from them. However, the backlash coming out of D.C. is starting to heat up, especially on the Democratic side. Watch this.
This is exactly what we worried about and we warned about Donald Trump, which is that he is going to appoint unqualified loyalists to shape this government into his own personal fiefdom and get revenge on generals and put essentially really unqualified people. I appreciate Mr. Hegseth's service in our armed forces, but being a serviceman, it does not make you qualified to lead the Department of Defense and to have access to our nuclear weapons. I'm very disturbed by this, and I'm very concerned about what it demonstrates about Donald Trump's priorities, which now seem to be coming true, as many of us warned.
Yeah, so he's a Democrat establishment all the way, okay? There's no question about it. That's why there's going to be a firestorm in D.C. There are going to be people who are going to try everything they can to prevent this from happening, because you have to understand, this goes through the Senate, right? The Senate has to confirm and agree to appoint him in this position, or any of these picks, rather. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so that's why it's very important for you to answer this question. Where do you get your news from? And that's why today's sponsor is Ground News. Go over to ground.news/Devori to check them out. Okay, so allow me to show you how this tool really works and why it is so powerful. I just searched up this story about Trump picking Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. This tool pulls in all of the articles from every media outlet, and then it organizes it across the political spectrum. So articles that are on the left and then articles that are on the right. If we look at one of the articles on the left, it's titled Trump's Latest Insane Pick, Fox News host Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. And then if I look on the right, it says Trump nominates Fox News host Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. You see the difference. What this tool will also do is tell you the overall story, which way does it lean the most, which is also known as their bias distribution score right here on the right side of the screen. Now, one of the things that makes this thing so powerful is called blind spot. This allows you to see which stories are being covered disproportionately by one side of the political spectrum. That's why I recommend Ground News. I love it. You will love it too. Take advantage now by clicking on the link in the description or in my pinned comment, or you can even scan the QR code on the screen and get 50% off the Vantage plan that gives you access to everything I just showed you, including the opportunity to do your own research and critically think for yourself. And my message to people who are like, well, I still don't know, Devori. Okay, well, you tell me, do you believe this is going to be any worse than what we've been having to experience as a country for the last 4 years? Think about Afghanistan. Think about foreign policy. Think about ag. Think about the border, right? Think about health and human services. Think about the economy, commerce. Think about energy. If we think about all those major things that are part of the federal government, especially in the executive branch, to most people, they would agree it hasn't been good. They would probably be underwater with the favorability rating. Most people would give these individuals an F.
Does anyone have confidence in the current leadership of the Pentagon and the way the defense situation has been operating for the last several years? I mean, from the Afghanistan pullout, which was an extreme debacle for which no one was held accountable. We've had spy balloons flying over the United States. We built a $300 million pier as a public relations stunt, which wound up killing an American service member. I'd say I've had just about enough of the so-called insiders running the Defense Department. I think we ought to give Pete Hegseth a chance because he's got two insiders. All the criticism of him is that he's not the expected Washington pick, and I'm just saying to you that the American people just voted against the expected Washington pick. So he's got 20 years in service, Afghanistan, Iraq, 2 Bronze Stars, Princeton, Harvard. Yeah, he's on TV, but so are the rest of us.
By the way, I think he ought to be given a chance. That list you just gave is really interesting because you highlighted a bunch of things that the civilian leadership of the country decided on. In the military, their job was just to execute. They execute.
How did it go?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
How did it go?
In terms of the decision making, you're assigning decision making responsibility to the military over things that civilians are responsible for.
So you make a good point. The civilian leadership made decisions, and then the people they put in charge of the Pentagon carried it out. And it was all pretty much a disaster. So now we have a new president who I think got elected in part because of some of those disasters, and he's going to put in some of the non-insiders in charge of not just this agency, but a bunch of them. Now, look, they've got to perform. They've got to perform. I mean, we got 53 U.S. senators that are Republicans, and Pete Hegseth, he's an American hero. The man won 2 Bronze Stars for his service, and he's been a champion for veterans. He's going to have to go up there just like everybody else and prove his knowledge of how to do this job. He's not immune from that, but we ought to give this man a chance, in my opinion.
All right, a few things are true at the same time, right? Number one, Abby Phillips's face when Scott Jennings shuts her down is just classic, right? I really love what Scott Jennings is doing. I think if CNN was to survive, it'd probably be because of him. But anyways, I digress. Secondly, just the arrogance, right? The nerve of these pundits and these people on the legacy media that just think they know better, right? Well, how could you put someone in charge who's going to make those type of choices for the nation? Who are you? Do you sit at the Pentagon? Did you serve in the military? Like, how would you know? Right? It's just an opinion, right? But it's an opinion skewed by their hatred for Trump. Now, what Scott Jennings was saying was spot on, okay? There's not much time to make things happen. So bringing in people like Pete Hegseth or Matt Gaetz, if this even gets approved, the time is of essence, right? They realistically only have 2 years to make things happen until the midterms. Now, let's get back to some of the meltdown. Here is MSDNC reacting to the Matt Gaetz announcement.
Well, Katie, I've gotten 2 different texts from different people at the Justice Department who just used the word insane to respond and react to this potential appointment, and then also questioning whether Matt Gaetz can be confirmed. And one person asked me to research whether anyone had ever been nominated for the post of Attorney General who had been investigated by the Justice Department. We'll have to look into that, but my initial reading is that I can't think of anytime that's ever happened in American history. So, look, I was over at the Justice Department earlier today doing some reporting on this question of how are career officials responding to this election result. What do they plan to do? There is no plan for a mass exodus among career officials. As Andrew said, they are used to serving Republicans and Democrats. They are used to changing policies on a dime. And look, we can't prejudge. I mean, Matt Gaetz may become a different person if he gets confirmed as Attorney General. But what he's shown so far as a member of Congress is disdain for the Department of Justice.
Yeah. Okay, so say what you want about Matt Gaetz, but what you can't say is how consistent he's been at challenging the establishment in D.C. Very outspoken. Like I said earlier in this video, he was one of the small minority of Republicans that got Kevin McCarthy out of there. Some people thought that was crazy. I actually thought it was a great idea because we weren't getting anywhere with Congress, right? And by the way, Congress has one of the lowest approval ratings in history. So something has to change in that regard, but also the weaponization of our government, that has to change too. Okay, the justice system should not be targeting political opponents, their family members, their business partners. I mean, that is just insane. Imagine if they focus all that attention towards the cartels who are clearly smuggling fentanyl and child trafficking across the border. What if they spent the energy there? That's what I expect to see from Matt Gaetz if he gets approved. And the big question is, will he get approved? Well, here's Scott Jennings reacting to this just now.
Are you not entertained? I mean, this is the most entertaining transition I've ever seen. No, I was as surprised as Paula, because it's not a name that we had seen. You know, we'd seen some reporting, a lot of different names, frankly, a lot of really sort of well-heeled Washington legal types that were on the list. So I'm as surprised as anyone. But what I take away from this is that this is a president-elect who is feeling his power. I mean, this is someone who is appointing people to things, whether it's Gaetz or anything else we've seen today, who is feeling his power, feeling his influence, doesn't feel like he's in a mood to negotiate with the people in Washington, D.C. He's here to do what he wants to do, and he's going to expect the Republicans to fall in line. Now, all these people, whether it's Gaetz or Hegseth or anyone else, have to go to confirmation and go through these committee hearings and prove themselves like anyone else. But it is apparent to me that Trump is in a decisive mood and is not someone who's interested in picking things that he would consider to be watered down. So
needless to say, you guys are going to have to buckle up because the media is going to be a shitstorm. Okay, they're going to go after Matt Gaetz for all of the investigations that he's been experiencing while he's been in Congress. No, he's never been convicted of any of these investigations. That's why him and Kevin McCarthy had a falling out, because Kevin McCarthy was behind him getting investigated in the first place. So, I mean, that remains to be seen. That's obviously going to get exposed during the confirmation hearing. And another part of that is how much Matt Gaetz challenged the establishment to their face in front of cameras. They have it on tape. Here's just a small clip of that.
I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time, and you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
And you also have Pete Hegseth, which they just don't believe he's qualified for whatever reason that they may come up with, particularly because he's part of Fox News. The legacy media, they're absolutely going to go after him, okay? They hate Fox News. They despise Fox News. They think Fox News is a bunch of liars. Now, you're noticing they have nothing to say about Tulsi Gabbard or any of the other picks. But so those are the two that are going to be the most, I guess, attention-grabbing and most controversial from Trump. Okay, so here's a question for you, all right? We're talking what happened to our military, what happened on the border, what happened in our economy with the working class, what's happened overseas, foreign policy, right? What's happening with energy and the cost of living, what's happened with the politicization of these different departments like the FBI, which has led to the Justice Department being weaponized to prosecute political opponents. If we take all of that into consideration, to include allowing men to play in women's sports, allowing children to be mutilated, right? Allowing these legacy media channels and the government to tell us that the sky is red, even though we all see that the sky is blue, that type of derangement. Can these picks, Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, The list goes on and on and on. Do you think that's going to be any worse than what we've already experienced? So that is my opinion. Why don't you in the comment section below, please answer that question. Do you think these people can do any worse? Also, do you believe Matt Gaetz is a good pick or a bad pick? Because I think that is going to be the number one question going around social media right now. What about Pete Hegseth? I don't think a lot of people even know him, not as much as they know Matt Gaetz socially. Do you think that is a great pick or a bad pick? What about Tulsi Gabbard? Do you think that is a good pick or a bad pick? Just put all your thoughts and reaction in the comments section below. Now, I'm sure the good pick that you would probably agree with is Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy now heading up the Department of Government Efficiency. It was announced last night. We recorded a video deep diving on the meltdown from MSNBC and CNN. They're so obsessed with Elon for some reason. I am now calling it Elon derangement syndrome. If you want to see that for yourself, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.